we are going to look at 5 reasons why to be a generous Christian. 5 reasons why, because here's the truth. If you don't know why to do something, you'll never do it. You know, if I say to you, do you think Christians should read their Bible? You say, yeah, Christians should read their Bible every day. They should read it. I said, do you do it? Well, I don't really do it every day. And I would say, but you know what the problem is? Because you don't know why. You don't know why to do it every day. So if you don't know why, then, well, why should you do it, right? But I read a book like 40 years ago on why to be in the Bible every day and spend time with God every day. And I was like, there were 10 reasons, and I read them. I'm like, wow, I need all 10 reasons. So for 40 days, I've been in the Bible every single day of my life because I knew the why. Not should. You should read the Bible. No, I knew why. So being a generous person, why should you do that? You'd be like, oh, I don't know. Why would you want to do that, right? Why would you want to do that? Most people don't know. They don't have any idea. I can tell you statistically, most people don't know. Here's the truth. 50% of church-going Christians in America, 50%, give $0 to $50 a year. 50%, all right? Another 20% give $50 to $500 a year. 25% give over $500 a year, and 5% give 10% or more of their income, whatever their income is. So for 95% of the Christians, they've just never figured out, like, why would I want to be generous? Why would I do that? So I'm going to give you 5 reasons why, and hopefully what's going to happen is 1 or 2 of them are really going to resonate with you. Be like, oh, that's me. I needed to hear that one today, Brian, all right? So we're going to do this together. Number one, generosity helps you overcome financial fear, worry, and stress. And you're like, that's me, all right? I want to speak to you then, all right? If that's you today, you're like, because what you do, like maybe you thought about giving sometimes, but you're like, man, if I'm just making it or I'm not making it, and if I give anything away, I'll be in trouble, right? You'd be like, you do the math and you say, I cannot give anything away. No, I cannot do that. So you're holding on really tight with everything you've got, trying to make it work, and it's not working, but giving is just like, whoa, I would love to, but no, I can't. There's a woman in the Bible, same story, exact same story, but much worse, all right? She was a widow. She was a single mom. 1 Kings 17, for those of you with Bibles, 1 Kings 17, verses 13 to 16. A guy named Elijah, God's servant, God's prophet. There's a famine in the land. Now, we're not talking about COVID. We're not talking about a recession. We're talking a famine. No rain in the land for 3 years. No food growing. People starving to death, all right? There was no, the government sending you checks. There was no unemployment. There was no food banks. There were no food lines. There's none of that going on. You just eked out your existence, and for a lot of people, it just ended in death. And we're going to come up on this story, and Elijah meets this woman, and he says, hey, can you give me something to eat? Give me something to drink. And she says, I've got a little oil in a jar and a little flour, and I'm going to take it home, and I'm going to make my last meal for me and my son, and we're going to eat it and die. Anyone got it that bad? Any of you 1 meal away from death? Nope. But that's what she had. That was what was going on with her. She'd done everything she could, trying to hold it together, and finally she's at the end of her rope. There's no, she hit rock bottom. Sometimes you got to hit rock bottom to find the rock. Jesus is the rock. And she hits this rock bottom place, and she said, I can't, how can I give to you? I don't even have enough for me and my son. We're going to eat it and die. And he says to her, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Maybe God sent me here in your life today to say, don't be afraid. You don't have any answers. You don't have any solution. Everything's broken financially. It's a mess. Don't be afraid. And in place of fear, you have to put faith in God. God is who? God is your provider. Elijah said to her, don't be afraid. Go home and do as you have said. But first make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have. Okay, what she had was not enough, right? You with me on that? She did not have enough to be sharing anything, right? Simple math. I can't give you something and then, no, simple math. From what you have, which isn't enough, first make something for me, for Elijah, then make something for yourself and your son. And then he talks about that God will move into the picture. God will stretch your resources. You'll be okay. And then it says this, She went away and did as Elijah had told her. So there was food every day, not just that day, every day for Elijah. She kept giving, and for the woman, and for her, not her son, and her family. So she was now feeding Elijah and herself and her son, and all the relatives showed up because she had food. God blessed that little bit that she had. Little is much if God is in it. And God blessed that little bit that she had, and it became enough for Elijah, the woman, her son, and her family. God moved into the picture. And you think, wow, Brian, cool story, but long time ago. Yeah, what about real life? Well, let me tell you about the story about Pat Kveton. Today on Facebook, I posted, I'm speaking in my church and asked people to pray for me, and I'm preaching on why be a generous Christian. And Pat Kveton quickly responded and said, Brian, I listened to you years ago, changed my life. Changed my life. Pat was a single mom. When I met her, she had just become a Christian. She had gotten a divorce. She had 3 children. And she got up one time in our church and told this story that she started coming to church. She accepted Christ. She heard me speak a few times on generosity. And she was like, wow, that's crazy, but I'm in so much trouble. And she said she made $25,000 a year as a daycare provider, taking care of kids in her home and her own kids. So that's what she made. She had $25,000 in unpaid bills, right? Do the math on that, right? You make 25 and you got 25,000 in bills that you can't pay, right? And so she said, and I began to hear about this idea of giving, and I decided that I needed all the help of God in my life. And I decided that whenever I got any money, the very first thing I would do is I would honor God, I would give to God, I would trust God with my family, with my future, with my finances. And she said, I began to give to God out of that little bit that I have. That was not enough. And then she told the story that over the next year and a half, God provided for her, and all of her bills got paid off. She began to make more money. She was able to take care of her children. And she said, I love giving. God gives to me, and I love sharing what he gives to me. It was a real life story. Another person in the Bible, Genesis 28:20. He was a college-age student, probably 18, 19 years old. His name was Jacob. He kind of had lied to his dad, got his brother mad at him. His brother said he was going to kill him. They had a lot of dysfunction in this family. Brother threatened to kill him. The mom said, you get out of town now. You escape in the middle of the night. You get out of here. You go to my brother's house, his uncle's, a long distance away. And so Jacob runs away from home. And that night he lays down on the ground. He's got a rock for a pillow. And he lays on the ground and he has a dream. And suddenly he sees that God is real. He sees God on a throne. He sees angels coming and going from the throne. And he wakes up from that dream and he's like, wow, I heard about God all my life, but now I know that God is real. The Quakers used to have a phrase, when did God become more than a word to you or more than a swear word to you? You see, that was a moment for Jacob that God was real. He really was real, not just religious talk in the home. He knew that God is real. But think about his life. He was scared. He was running away from home. He had no job. He had an uncertain future. He didn't know if the wild animals were going to eat him along the way. It was a scary, scary time. But listen to what he says. He wakes up from this dream. Jacob made a vow saying, if God will be with me and watch over me on this journey I am taking and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear so that I return safely to my father's house someday, then the Lord will be my God. And of all that you give me, God, I will give you 1/10 of everything you put into my hands. You see, that wasn't a financial decision. That was a spiritual decision. That was an issue of the heart. Where was his confidence going to be? Was it going to be in himself, or was it going to be in the God of heaven who created him and made him? What about you? What about you? Have you had a Jacob moment? Have you made a decision? Said, God, whatever you give me, whatever you put in my hands, whether I have little or much, God, I promise from this day forward, whatever you give me, I will give to you at least 1/10, oh God, to thank you for your provisions. I know I made that decision. I was about 23 years old. I was at a time I'd finished college. I got my BA, my born-again degree. That's what I got in college, my BA, my born-again degree, UW-Madison. Came back home. I started a job. And at that time in my life, I was using credit cards to buy things I didn't need with money I didn't have to impress people I didn't like and people who didn't care about me, all right? So I was being really dumb with my money. But I soon had more month than I had money. I was living beyond my means. And one day I got my paycheck and I looked at it and it was a little tiny paycheck and I had a big pile of bills. And I'm like, man, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? This isn't working. I can't live like this. This is just a mess. And I was sitting there and I always sent the Spirit of God saying to me, Brian, trust me. Trust you? What do you mean trust you? And I'm like, yeah, God, I'll trust you for heaven when I die, but I'm talking life now, God. I need help now. The Lord's like, trust me. And I'm like, well, how? Honor me. Well, how do I do that? Give to me. Give to you. Are you kidding me? Look at this. This is a mess. Little paycheck, big pile of bills, 2 weeks before my next paycheck. God, this is crazy. And as I prayed, I was like, I suddenly had a desire to give 1/10 of my income to God, just like Jacob. Just like Jacob, I'm like, my future's uncertain. I don't know what's going to happen with my life. But God, I want to do this. But I remember taking my hand and a pen in my hand and saying, okay, God, when I get income, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write a check to your work. And I did that. My hand was shaking. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. God, help me figure out what bills to pay. Help me live for the next couple of weeks. And I began to do that. Paycheck after paycheck after paycheck. And my hand stopped shaking. And I just saw that God helped me. I quit buying things I didn't need. You know, wouldn't do a lottery ticket. A lottery ticket is a tax on people that are bad at math. You know, I was quit being dumb with my money. I saw God stretch my resources and provide for me. He guided for me, helped me in my work. He helped me with my income. There's things that God did, and every time I would get a paycheck or some money or something, I was like, God, thank you. Thank you, thank you. This is my way of thanking you. I always say, you know, give for the best that the rest might be blessed. What would you rather have in life, 100% without the blessing of God and help of God, or 90% with the blessing and help of God? Amen. Which would you rather have, right? So I need God's help. You need God's help. And so for me, that was just a decision I made, and I just began to do that, began to honor God. Number 2, generosity helps you overcome pride and workaholism to experience God as your provider. Generosity helps you overcome your pride and workaholism and helps you experience God as your provider. You see, there's some people here, you're like, I'm not worried about money. I got plenty of money. I got what I want. I got nice stuff. I got, I'm okay. I'm good. I'm not worried. I've got, my retirement accounts. I got money in the bank. I got a good paycheck, whatever. But what's going on with you is you're like, this is mine. This is my money. I earned it. I make it. I'm going to spend it. I'll do what I want with it. Some people, it's like, I'm going to make all I can. I'm going to spend all I can. I'm going to save all I can. I'm going to put some in a can, and I'm going to sit on my can. But it's all about me. That's what it's about. And it's mine, mine, mine. My son is 3 years old. We did a birthday party for him and all of his friends. And so we had the birthday party, and so he's there, and all the kids were we opened all the presents, all the kids were kind of playing with the presents, and he was getting, opening presents, and then he looked around, and all the kids were playing with his presents, and he went, no, no, and he went, mine, 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 and he's sitting there like this, trying to hold on, all these kids are crying, and he's like, mine. Some of you are like my 3-year-old son. It's all mine. God's got a word for you today. Deuteronomy 8:17-18. Deuteronomy 8:17-18. You may say to yourself, a little self-talk, my power and the strength of my hands have produced this wealth for me. But the Bible says, but remember, it means to honor, to thank, to acknowledge. But remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth. Mine, 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 mine. No, all came from Him. If you're breathing today, can you give yourself credit for breathing? If you got a heartbeat, you're making your heartbeat right now? Where were you born? Did you choose to be born in America? Or wherever you happen to be born? If you got a good mind, who gave you that mind? See, the God of heaven, everything you have came from God. Everything you have comes from God. David, near the end of his life, 1 Chronicles 29:14, there was a big offering that was taken. It was over $35 billion. It says, everything, God, he's speaking to God, everything comes from you. And we have only given you what came from your hand. 1 Chronicles 29:14. God owns it all and loans it all. Whatever you have, you are a steward. You are a manager. You are a trustee. What are you going to do with what God's given you? What are you going to do with what you got? Because God is the one who's given it to you. So what are you doing with what God has given you? How are you stewarding that? Some of you here, it's all about work. You're working 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. It's about getting and working and striving and all of this. And you're like, if it's going to be, it's up to me. It's going to be, it's up to me. And you're like, I'm going to be the provider. I'm going to take care of everybody. It's all up to me. It's not what the Word of God teaches. God teaches He is the provider. He can provide through you, and your work will be part of His provisions for your life or your family. That'll be part of it. But God is the source of all things. He's the owner of all things. But generosity will teach you that God provides. How will it teach you that, right? How is that possible? 1 Corinthians 16:2 tells us how you can experience God as your provider, where you suddenly realize it's not if it's up to me, if it's going to be, it's up to me. You can realize suddenly like, whoa, no, there's a God in heaven who cares about me and my needs and my family and what's going on. There's a God who guides and a God who provides. 1 Corinthians 16:2, on the first day of the week, each of you should set aside some income and save it to the extent that God has blessed you. So the Bible gives him clear instructions. How are you going to discover that God is your provider? It gives very clear instructions in 1 Corinthians 16:2. It says, live your life, and as you're living your life, all right, you live your life, pause once a week, first day of the week, pause and look back over the last 7 days. Look back over the last 7 days. Now, the way this works for my wife and I is we send ourselves an email. We just really say, how did God provide the last 7 days? And we'll write it down. And so we'll write, oh, we got a paycheck. We'll write that down. We might have gone out to dinner with someone, and maybe the bill was going to be $100. And so I told my wife, hey, honey, we're going to buy the dinner tonight. And so I go to pay for the $100, and the other guy goes, I already got it. I'm like, hey, I was just ready to spend $100, but they got it. That's a provision, right? That's a provision from God through somebody else. And so, all right, so God provided. I'd write that down. This last year, I love this story. So last year, last summer, my mother-in-law was going to come for 5 weeks, broke her out of COVID jail, out of the nursing home. Broke her out, brought her here from Indiana, but we live on a second floor, and how are we going to get Grandma up to the second floor? She's in a wheelchair and a walker. How are we going to get her upstairs, all right? So we're like, okay, what can we do? Well, we can put plywood in the back of our house, and we'll wheel her around the back of the house and up the plywood and up by the patio and get her in the bedroom. And it's like, I don't want to burn the grass. The plywood's expensive. It's going to be a problem. I don't want to do that. So we're praying about it. Well, can we let Grandma sleep in the garage? No, that's a bad idea. Grandma cannot sleep in the garage. Okay, but how are we going to get her up, right? How are we going to get her upstairs? So I'm looking around searching. Well, you know what? There's these little chairs. They get attached like onto the railings, and there's a little chair, and you put Grandma on the little chair, and you hit the button, and it goes, and drops her off at the top stair. That's the solution, right? Okay, we're going to get Grandma up the stairs for 5 weeks. So we're going to do that. So I call around a bunch of companies, it's $5,000. I'm like, can I drive it around town for $5,000? Just to go up the stairs, $5,000 to go up the stairs? Yep, $5,000. Wow. Well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? How are we going to get Grandma? It's the only way we're going to get Grandma upstairs. Yeah, the money's going out of my wallet. And one guy says, hey, the company said, maybe you can get a used one. I said, well, what do you mean a used one? He goes, well, count your stairs. Okay, there's 14. Check, measure what the riser is. Well, they're 8 inches. Measure how long your stair thing is, 158 inches. He goes, now try, that's what you need. Try to go find one. And so I'm like, okay. So I'm like, okay, pray and go to Craigslist. Pray and go to Facebook Marketplace. So I go to Facebook Marketplace. I find one in Highlands Ranch. And I go, and the people had it. It was 3 months old. They got it for the brother. The brother died. They wanted it out of their house. So I unscrewed it from their stairs. I bring it to my house. I lay it down. I screw it in. I plug it in. Grandma's got a ride. Grandma's got a ride. $5,000. They sold it to for $700. Yeah, they sold it to me for $700. Glad to have it out of their house. All right? Is that a blessing? Who gets the credit in that story? Yeah. Was it, oh, Brian, you're an amazing guy. No, nothing to do with Brian, right? Except for my faith in the journey. It's God. And then we knew, oh, Grandma, we better get Grandma oxygen. Don't want her dying in the bed. So we got her an oxygen machine. That's $1,000. Found that on Craigslist for $200. Okay, so back to the story, right? So we're doing our email thing. How did God provide the last 7 days? And, okay, how much were we going to spend on the lift? How much? $5,000, right? How much did we spend? $4,300 blessing. So, and then the oxygen tank, $1,000, we spent $200. $800 blessing, right? So together you add that up, $5,100 of blessings from the God in heaven who knows our needs and knows Grandma's needs and gets all the credit. How do you thank God when he does something? Whether it's a meal or whether you went to Kohl's and you got $400 of stuff, and between Kohl's cash and discounts you spent $20. You know, how do you thank him? You thank him by honoring him financially. And so what we do is we have a giving account. You know, we have checking account, savings account, we have a giving account. And we'll add up the blessings. And sometimes they might be $20. You know, I mean, maybe we'll put $20. We take a tenth. So that week, let's say it was over $5,000 of blessings. So we took over $500 and put it into the giving account. And we just stick it there. And then we say, God, you show us who and when and where to share it. You did it. You blessed us, and we have money in the giving account. Some weeks we only put in $20 or $30 or $40. But I've been doing this for over 40 years, and there's been thousands and thousands of things we wrote down, week by week by week by week by week. God provided and provided and provided and provided, and out of thanksgiving, we took a portion of the blessing, put it into a giving account, and so we've never run out of, we always can give, right? There's always stuff in there because God is always providing week by week. It's a game changer. It is a game changer. Number 3, generosity helps you bring God's peace and order to your finances. Generosity helps you bring God's peace and order to your finances. Matthew 6:33, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you, will be given to you as well. If you put God first in your life, you live your life all out for God. God, I want to do your will in my life, in this world. God, I want to live for you in all that I do, wherever I go, whoever I'm with. God, I want to live for you. When you live all out for God, God says he will add to you what's needed for life. Food, clothing, shelter. God will add that to you as you live for him. I like to say if it's God's will, it's God's bill. If it's God's will, if you're doing God's will in life, it's God's bill to bring whatever is necessary into the picture for you to serve him, God's will, God's bill. Same idea, let's say you worked for me. If I own a company, you work for me, and I said, hey, I want you to go to a conference in California in 2 months. You know, it's in San Francisco, and there's airplane tickets, and there's hotel, and there's meals. And I would say, you know, do you have 4 days? Can you do that? And you say, yeah, I can do that. You would not go home to your spouse if you're married and say, oh, I got to go to this conference. How are we going to pay for it? We got to come up with the airplane ticket and the hotel money and the food money. You would not fret. You would not worry. You would not do that at all. Why? Because you would say, if it's Brian's will, it's Brian's bill, right? That's just how it would work. You would be totally at peace with going to the conference, not worrying about finances, because you're doing the will of your employer. But the same is true with God. As we live for him and serve him, he guides us and provides for us. His will, his bill. Deuteronomy 14:22, be sure to set aside 1/10 of all that your fields produce each year. In other words, your income. In other words, have a plan in place to systematically and intentionally, yes, I receive financial income and blessings, and I have a plan to set aside resources to give to God, all right? Now, let me explain how this works and also how it doesn't work. Imagine this morning if I got up, I was going to come here, got this jacket, talking about order, bringing God's order to your finances, giving to God first, making that your highest financial priority, just having a plan to do that. Now imagine today, if I came here and before I came, I put this button in the wrong hole. And I come over here to church and I'm in the lobby and you see me and you say, hey, Brian, before you get up there in front of everybody, you might want to fix your jacket. I say, oh man, thank you so much. I really appreciate you telling me about that. Okay, I got a button here, I got a hole here, I got a button here, I got a hole here. Okay, all right, good, I'm good, all right? I'm good, everything's fine. You'd be like, no, Brian, you're an idiot. Okay, no, Brian, the order's all wrong. And I say, no. And I say, look, okay, I know the order's all wrong. I know I got problems here. There's pressure here. This isn't really working well, but my problems, I just need more buttons. If I had some more buttons and some more buttonholes, I wouldn't have this problem. And say, so I don't know what to do because it's just a mess. You see, I've done a lot of debt counseling over the years with people in financial trouble, and they come to my office and we look at all their income, we look at all their bills, get everything all organized, and then I kind of put it in front of them and I said, okay, you're making $6,000 a month, but you're spending $9,000 a month, and you're in the whole $110,000, and there's all this mess going on. And so I always say, I have one question for you. We're to go forward now that we identified the mess. I have one question. Will you give to God whenever you get money in the future? And they'd be like, what? I said, will you give to God whenever you get money in the future? And they'd say like, no, look at this mess. They'd say, you are crazy, Brian. You want us to give? We cannot give. Look at this mess. I said, no, I understand it's a mess. They said, we cannot give. And they'd say, Brian, you are crazy. I said, no. You have been crazy. You've been crazy for a number of years. This didn't just happen overnight. You've been crazy. But here's what I want you to know. I don't have any solution for you. I can't give you a spreadsheet. I don't have the answers, but I know this. You can invite God into your mess. You can invite God into your pain, and he can give gain. God can help you. He can turn your mess into a message. He can turn your trials into triumphs. God can move in your life, but you have to start by honoring him with whatever he gives you. And they say, are you serious? And I say, I am. Half the people say, we're not doing it. We're out of here. And I'm like, okay. And they walk out. The other half say, you're serious, aren't you? I'm like, I'm serious. What do you want us to do? You get a paycheck, you get financial blessings. Just give to God. Just start giving to God. Well, what about the mess? I know. He'll show you the way out. He'll give you wisdom. He'll guide you. He'll provide for you in ways you never imagined. You just have to get the order right. Just get the order right. Just start giving to God first. And over time, it'll all straighten out. And those people, when it all got straightened out, and I'd see the other people a year or two later, how you doing? Oh man, we're worse than ever. It's God's order. Giving brings God's order to your finances, even when it doesn't make sense, even when it's been crazy. It's the first step out. It's the first step out. Malachi 3:10, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me in this. Only place in the Bible that God says we can test him. In this area of giving. Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will be not room enough to store it. Okay, this is the rubber meet the road on this. In my little devotional, you can get online, I have an article, a variety of articles in there, but I tell people, if you're afraid, start a 90-day test. If you're in the midst of craziness, pressure, start a 90-day test. Start a 90-day test. You start giving at least 1/10 of your income to God and see what God does. And if in 90 days you have not seen God work in your life, do anything in your life, he says, test me. Go 90 days. At the end of 90 days, nothing good ever happened. You did not see God's hand in your life at all. Stop and never give the rest of your life. Because here's the truth. The mess is not going to get solved in 90 days anyway. But better to honor God and then look weekly. How did God work? How did he guide? How did he provide? Go ahead and do it. I've known many people that have done the 90-day test. I've never known one person that stopped giving. So maybe that's what you need right now. Number 4, generosity helps you fight off greed and the dragon of materialism. It's Christmas. Hey, everybody wants everything, right? Luke 12:15. Jesus says, watch out. Watch out. Be on your guard. What? Watch out. Be on your guard. What? Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. All the advertising in the world is trying to convince you right now that you and your family needs the brighter thing, the shiner thing, the bigger thing, the faster thing, the newer thing, the whatever thing. And thinking that's life. No, that's not life. Jesus says, I have come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. 1 Timothy 6:10 says, godliness with contentment is great gain. Godliness with contentment is great gain. You can have that. Everyone in this room, regardless of your age or income, you can have godliness with contentment and you can have great gain. Great gain does not come from getting everything you want. Contentment doesn't come from getting everything you want. It comes from being thankful for what you already have and sharing it. You know, a friend of mine years ago, I was talking to him and I said, why are you a generous person? He said, Brian, it's how I fight the dragon. I said, what dragon? He said, the dragon of materialism. He said, it stalks me every day of my life. It tells me I can't be happy, I can't be satisfied unless I get this or that or the other thing. And he said, every time I give, it's like taking out a sword and telling the dragon, back off. God is my provider. I'm content in God. God cares for me. God loves me. God is for me. You, dragon, back off. Wow. Back off, dragon. Generosity will help you fight that dragon. And number 5, generosity helps you bless others and experience real joy. Generosity helps you bless others and experience real joy. You, my friend, can become Jesus with skin on in someone's life. You see, as you live your life and as God provides for you, and as you learn to look back and say, God, thank you for what you did, and as you learn to set aside resources to give, there will always be something there because God will always be providing. And so you'll have that and you'll be stirred. God will stir your heart to help that person or to help that ministry or to help that missionary or to help that project or to help that program and to help your church. And you'll just be giving and you'll do it with joy and you'll be excited about it. And God will use you in different ways. And it'll just be a thrill for you to just be a blessing to someone, to know that you came and helped them at an important time. Listen to this verse, Luke 16:9. I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourself. Let me read that again, because some of you didn't even know this is in the Bible. I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourself. You're like, is that telling me to buy my friends? Well, kind of. For eternity, yes. I tell you, use worldly wealth, that stuff you laid aside and then had it to give with, to gain friends for yourself so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. How is that possible? How can you take a $10 or $20 bill or $50 bill or $100? How could that be used in this world and change a life, and somehow heaven is different? Your relationships are different because you did something with money? Let me show you. Let me have you use your imagination how this could possibly be. My wife and I go to Africa. We go to Africa every year. going for 10 years now, and we're involved in child sponsorships and some charity projects. We're doing a variety of things. But I want you to imagine for a moment that you weren't born in America. You happen to be born in Uganda. That's where we go. You were raised in Southwest Uganda, and you went to school, and you graduated, and then you got a job, and you got married, and you have 3, 4 kids, and you're living your life. And you make $2 to $3 a day. That's the average income. In the morning, you wake up, and you're thirsty, and the kids are thirsty, and your wife's thirsty, and so you say, hey, wife, kids, you need to go get some water. And so they go, okay, and because they know the drill. So the water's 30 minutes away. So they walk 30 minutes. The kids got their buckets. The wife's got a much bigger bucket. And they go and they walk for 30 minutes. And they get to a little place, and there's this little black, green, nasty water bubbling up out of the ground. And they put in their buckets, and they put in their jugs, and they pull it up. The wife puts it on her head. It's 40 pounds, the big one. And then the kids, carrying their stuff, and they're carrying it back the 30 minutes. So, you're at home, and they come back, and here's what they brought you. Looks just like this. This is the water they brought you. But it's time for breakfast, and everybody's thirsty, so drink up. Would you give that to your child? Give that to your spouse? Would you drink it yourself? Would you give it to your dog or your pet cat? Cat, maybe. No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't do that, but guess what? It's the only choice you have. This is it. And by drinking this, I just need to let you know, and you know this, if you grew up in Uganda, you're going to be sick 30, 40, 50 days a year. You're not going to be able to go to work. Your kids aren't going to go to school. You're too sick to get out of bed or get off the mat on the floor, because that's all you got. And then one day there was a meeting at the school, and you went to the meeting, and some people came, and they gave everybody this water filter, this thing right here. And they told you it could clean water. And you're like, that's the craziest thing you'd ever heard. How can you clean water like that? But they gave you this filter, and they gave you 2 buckets. And so they told you to take your pond scum and pour it in there. So you get your pond scum and then put the filter on there, and then have a bucket over here. And when the filter's done, this is the water. 99.99% clean. And now for the first time in your life, you have clean water. You're not sick. Your spouse isn't sick. Your children aren't sick. You are not sick anymore. And this little filter, it lasts for over 50 years. The rest of your life, you have clean water. And then the next year, the people come back, and this year they found out they bring this little crazy contraption, this little solar lamp. You see, because in your family, when you had dinner at night, you're over your little table, and you got a candle on the table, and you got a kerosene lamp, because there's no electricity anywhere. So you're sitting over that little table with your lamp and your kerosene your candle and your kerosene lamp, and that black fume is rising up, and you and your children, you've got some diseases in your eyes, you've got some lung issues, but that's your light. So you eat at dinner or candlelight over candlelight, right? Not romantic kind of candlelight, but you have dinner that night, and then when the dinner is done, your kids want to study, so they get out their pencil and paper and their books, and they're hanging over that little kerosene lamp with that black smoke, and they're trying to do their homework, but they can only do it for about 40 or 50 minutes because that black smoke gives them a headache, and they have to stop, and it gives them some eye problems and other issues. But that's the light you've got, and so that's how life is. But then that next year they came and they gave you this light. They showed you it had 3 settings. And you take this light home, you put it over your kitchen table, 5 times brighter than a kerosene lamp. And you have dinner. No smelly smoke, no headaches, no sickness. The kerosene took 30% of your income. Now that money's in your pocket for your family's needs. And every night, you now have light. And every night your children study. Now they don't study 40 minutes a night. Now they're studying 2 hours because they're not sick. No headaches, no sickness. And and then during the day you put it in the light, and then every night you got light. Every night. And then one year, COVID struck, and your kids couldn't go to school for 2 years. And then school started up again, but no matter how hard you tried, you didn't have the money for the school clothing. You didn't have the money for the supplies, but somebody gave some money and they said, we want to help your kid get back to school this year. So that happened. But you don't know who this is, right? You're just an African. You're just living your life, but God, the God of heaven, somehow provided this for your family. And then you die someday. And you're in heaven, and an angel comes, puts his arm around you, said, you remember that solar lamp? Yeah. Oh, we'll never forget this. Remember the water? Yeah. Well, Megan, she's walking down the streets in heaven. Megan over there, she's the one that gave you the solar lamp. Really? Yeah. And Brianne, they gave some money to get you that water filter. You'd go up to them and say, hey, ladies, we've never met, but can you come to my house? I want to tell you what this meant, what you did for us. It changed our lives. We weren't sick anymore. Our kids could study. Our life was better. There's so many things that happened. And they'd be like, well, that's cool. That's good. That's awesome. That's great. But he'd say, no, you have no idea what you did. I just want to tell you what you did and the difference you made in our family. The Bible says we can use our worldly wealth to gain friends for ourselves, that someday we can see them in heaven and they can say, let me tell you what God did with your gift for me or for us. Last scripture, last story, Matthew 25, 37 to 40. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when do we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When do we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When do we see you sick in prison and go visit you? The king will reply, truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. You did for me. My kids, a number of years ago, they were like 9, 11, and 13, and it was December, and it seemed like each day they were giving me more and more presents. They wanted, Dad, we want this, and Dad, we want that. And the list kept growing and growing and growing over Christmas. If you've had kids, you understand that. Or maybe you did that growing up, right? More for me. And I finally said to the kids one day, I said, hey, okay, we're not getting you all these things that you're wanting. And I said, and whose birthday is it? And they said, Jesus. Jesus' birthday. The reason for the season, the Christ and Christmas. He's the reason, right? Well, how do you honor him? How do you do that? And anyway, I said, whose birthday? And they said, Jesus. And I said, well, who should get the biggest birthday presents at Christmas? And they said, Jesus. But he's not here. And I began to ponder that in the weeks leading up to Christmas. Whose birthday is it? Who should get the biggest presents? And as I approached that Christmas, we opened up all of our gifts, read the Christmas story, opened up all of our gifts. We got all done opening our gifts, and I said to the kids, I said, hey, got one more thing to do. They said, what's that? And I gave them all envelopes. My kids all got envelopes. I got an envelope. My wife got an envelope. And I said, open the envelope. And they opened it up, and their eyes got big. They're like, oh, money. A lot of money. All the envelopes were filled with cash. So is this for us? I said, no. Who's it for? Jesus. Jesus? He's not here, Dad. No. But we can give gifts. We can give birthday presents to Jesus. How? Well, in the envelope, there's a verse, Matthew 25:40. Whenever you've done it to the least of these, you've done it unto me. When you help the needy, when you help the least, when you help the lonely, when you help the lost, when you help God's leaders, when you do that, you're doing it unto Jesus. So I said, so in this envelope, there's all this money, and there's the verse, and there's a card with people we know, single moms, and their children, and widows, and the youth pastor, and the church pastor, and some missionaries that you know. And kids, what we're going to do is each of you look over your list and how much money do you want to give to these people? So we all did that together, And then we had to share with the family, who do we want the money to go to and why? And we said, because in the Kluth family, Jesus is going to get the biggest birthday present, the biggest Christmas present. You know what? That's never stopped. 15 years later, we do that. And it somehow puts Christmas in perspective. And my kids have joy in giving. We give away far more than they got, but they know that Jesus is the reason for the season. Wouldn't that be cool if some of you did that? The church I used to be part of, we used to hand out envelopes every Christmas. Whose birthday is it anyway? Whose birthday is it anyway? And we challenge people, find a needy person across the street or down the street or in your city or on the other side of the world and help someone this Christmas. Be Jesus with skin on. Give Jesus a birthday present. Honor him above all else. My friends, the greatest life to live is a life of open-handed living. With God as your provider, guiding you, providing for you, helping you, you learning to see what he's done, you learning to set aside resources to give, and then giving them with joy and expectation that God's going to take what you gave, whether it's little or much, but he's going to take it and he's going to use it to bless somebody, and their life's going to be better. Some people will be in heaven because of your giving. Some people will see you in heaven and say, I need to talk to you, what you did. You have no idea what it did for me, for my family. You have no idea, but thank you for giving to the Lord. The greatest life you can live is a generous life, and it's not about how much money you make in this world. Faithful in little, faithful in much, unfaithful in little, unfaithful in much. But learning to be open-handed, looking to God, letting him guide, provide, and then sharing what he's given. It's the most awesome Christian life to live that way.